Alright people, in this video, I'm going to say this up front just so people can click on the video to kind of see what video it is. In this video, I'm going through our 18-inch giant beats. Two original, these are white label, not the black label serial number of a little bit later, 71 to 73, 4-ish or whatever. These are original giant beats. And sometimes, you'll hear people sometimes say giant beats started in 67 and went to, 71, or started in 69 and went to 71. I know that they had serial numbers up until I think 74. I think I've seen one that has 74 serial number. But anyway, whether it started in 67 or 69, I don't know. I wasn't there. Anyway, here's the plan. Okay, this is a reissue. Now this reissue, if you've heard in other videos, I had said years ago when they first came out with the reissues at the drum show, Paiste, or somebody there, I don't know if it was Paiste proper, or a dealer, brought a set, one of the first sets of the giant beats. I called my friend Bob, he went and bought the whole set except for the 14 inches. I believe this is the 18 that came from that set. And like I said then, I think these are, I think in general, I've said before, I think the reissues are better than the originals in general. Like I said, I think that I think they could make I would consider this to be a medium thin version. If they made one that was a little medium heavy, like just slightly heavier, because generally I think the original giant beats these are a little, the reissue giant beats to me are a little thinner than the originals. And I have a couple originals here I'll talk about. So anyway, where's my paperwork? I'm always so well organized. But that's the charm, isn't it? Alright, so, and then of course so this is the reissue. From 2005, I think, when they first came out, or maybe 2006, or I don't know. The serial number on here seems to indicate that it says 05. So anyway, this is an original giant beat that I got from my main man Bob, who loves you, baby. Remember the 3 o'clock embossed stamp. And the 9 o'clock, remember the old font, the old Western, giant beat. Come on down to the giant beat store and buy a perambulator and a bag of tobacco. You know what I'm saying? So this is an 18, and I want to say this baby weighs, hang on here, because I didn't want to write on any of the cymbals, because I didn't put tape on them, because I didn't want to, one of them had a slightly, like I said, the original giant beats, kind of when they were first out, had a slightly greenish brown finish to them, like tone, which of course they tried to copy, which they did. It's more. I think I think they did a great job. I'm not one of these guys that says, it's got to be exactly the same. But in any case, they're different. There's a slightly different tone. Anyway, I think this one. Anyway, I didn't want to get these mixed up, but neither here nor there. So here is a original. This one is a little more worn in the giant beat ink department. Anyway, let's get down to brass tacky wackies. So we have, I'm going to have to, I think that the heaviest one, I believe, is this one. So, out of the original, out of the 3 giant beats I have here, reissue, again, one of the first, I believe, ever out, because it was bought the drum show 2005, blah, blah, blah. And this one weighs 1,318 grams on a very good scale I have that is, accurate. 1,318 on the reissue from 2005 or 6, or whenever they originally came out. And then okay, this is the heaviest one. This one weighs 1,498, and this one weighs 1,536. So you'll see the difference between, at least the sample I have here, which of course isn't so huge, the heaviest of the 2 original, the heavier of the 2 is 1,536 grams, which is more than 200 grams heavier than one of the first batch of reissues. Hence in the videos when recently I'd yap about, I think Paiste should make a slightly heavier version of the reissue giant beats, calling the current ones that they make a medium thin, and calling maybe one that they would introduce a medium heavy. So maybe, 1,314 grams, 1,500 and whatever this is, 36. Let's say no heavier than this. Maybe a teensy, but whatever. And of course, as we all know, Paiste just came out in the past month or two with a thin model, so which is actually thinner than this. No, I think that's fine and dandy. I mean, it'll have a trashier tone. I think, especially for jazz and stuff, it'll sound great. But if you're gonna play rock, in my opinion, if you're gonna be playing like pop rock, I would advise against buying a Giant Beat Thin. Now, I should augment that by saying I haven't personally seen a Giant Beat Thin. But if they're thinner than this, you know, you don't want to be playing heavier. I don't think you'd want to be playing heavier stuff on it. Anyway, that's my editorial. But so here we go. So let's hear them. So we have, again, Reissue from 2005 or 6, whatever, one of the first original reissues, and 2 original Giant Beats. This is the thinnest of the original Giant Beat that I have here, and the heaviest of the original. So, here's the Reissue. Here's the thinner of the original late 60s. And then this is the heavier, the heavier range of what I have here that Bob let me have to make this video. Anyway, so here we go. Now you notice in these cymbals, in B8 alloy cymbals, you'll hear a frequency that often comes through, and I used to notice it on 2002s, when, like I said in other videos, when I first got it, you'll hear a real high, like, and back in the day, before we had space phones and all kinds of other stuff, the original Western Electric what was it, Illinois Bell, there was one of the branches, Illinois Bell, I don't know, they made the frickin' phones. And anyway, in those old phones, if you remember, there was a ring. They all had the same ring. There's a certain frequency that comes through that's very similar to that. I remember, again, playing, when I first got my 2002s years ago, I remember always thinking the phone was ringing. I'd be like, God, is the phone ringing? Anyway, you can kind of notice that here. Here we go. Right in there. It's actually higher, of course. But here. And here. Now, granted, these are individual samples we have. It'd be great if we could go back in time and get 30 of them. You know, obviously with Paiste, I think there's much less of a clunker issue than you'll have with, well, to use the Zildjian term, cast cymbals. And again, with Zildjian and Sabian, these companies, what they do is they have a big vat of boiling lava bronze, and they make individual. So imagine individual. Chip, like a little dab of that you're going to make a cookie out of, like little balls that you're going to put on the baking sheet and make cookies out of. What they do is then they individually roll those, individually cut them and make the cymbal out. Whereas what Paiste does is they cast a big vat of boiling bronze, big same cast batch, it's cast, but they make a big huge pile instead of individual itty bitty piles. They take the big pile and they roll that flat, and then they cut sheets out of that. So as far as I'm concerned, that would make more consistency. I mean, I love Zildjians. There's a lot of Zildjians I love, but just to address that issue. So, again, here we go. One of the first reissues, when they first came out a few years ago, 18. Lighter of the originals. And the heavier. So you can hear that, and then the fundamental pitch. God, I hope I have these right, you know, because sometimes it can. Wait a second here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, here it is. Definitely the heavier. Again, 1536 gram, 1498 gram, 1318. Again, this goes to my pleading with Paiste because I know they think I'm some freak in a basement that makes drum videos. But I think I might be onto something. I think it would behoove them to make a heavier. I'm not talking about the hi-hats, but the multis. Make a heavier 18, a heavier 20, and definitely a heavier ride. Not too much heavier on the ride, but I do think 24 is a heavy cymbal anyway. But a little heavier too, because there's a lot of wash in that ride, which I think is great for jazz and stuff. But again, they should also reissue a 22, which of course I know one of the companies, I think, bought a whole bunch of them and was selling them on eBay at a premium, like maybe a year ago. And I think maybe Paiste probably is thinking of issuing a 22. It would be a great idea, I think. Of course, having a medium thin version, a medium heavy version. Anyway, who am I? So here we go again. I want to play these a lot because I know in a lot of videos somebody's like, "Hey, here's the ancient sacred one, psh, and here's the bad one. Psh, thanks everybody for watching my video." Click. So I'm gonna go overboard here. So remember, I hit the heavier of the original white label. You know what we'll do? We'll put it in a bottom context. Somewhat, so here we are, like. It's kind of cheesy, but sometimes you need to hear a little bit of the lower frequencies to get into it. All right, so one thing I want to point out too that I kind of pointed out in other videos, but I didn't really have an example. Years ago when these first came out, my friend Bob, the 20 that came with it, he let me have for a day or two, which was neato. I think he sold that one though. But the first thing I did notice when I ddid see these at the drum show back in 05 or 06, again I forget when it was, is that the bells were smaller. Yeah, I mean, this is, if you look at the profile of the cymbal, this is essentially looks exactly like a 2002, which is probably, they use if you look at the original Giant Beats, though, they're slightly different. The bell is a little bit bigger and covers more area. So I don't know if you can see this. I hope you can. So can you see that? That's very 2002. When I say that, I'm not judging anything. I'm just pointing it out, okay? And then, here is the... So there's a little bit of plastic on there. Whoops, that's something's going to fall and Bob will slay me. And this is the Giant Beat. So you can see the bell is bigger. Okay, not by much, but it's definitely not the little, small 2002 bell. This is really more, in my opinion, a 602 type bell. Of course, the lathing is different than a 602. But it's also, I noticed too on the 505s, I really love the 505s, and I found that the 505s generally have this bell. I don't know if it's this exact same bell. The 505s have a slightly bigger bell than a 2002. I think that's why I like them so much. Anyway, and I did for a while. I was foaming at the mouth some years ago because I was always, again, I used to call it Paiste and bug those guys about, hey, you should bring back the Giant Beats. You should bring back the Giant Beats. Like a broken record. I actually, now bear with me here, you gotta wait. I found some cymbals some years ago that they used to make, and they were lower line student stuff. Let me reach into my bag of cymbals there, or one of them. And, where are you? Alright, here's one of them. Okay? Okay. Alright. The Paiste 502 Plus that they made. Now, for a long time, Paiste made 502 cymbals that they changed a couple times. The original 502s were laid similar to the Giant Beats, tighter like that, but not quite the same. And they had a big bell. Anyway, I don't want to get into the 502 shit. The point I'm trying to make is when these 502s came out, and you can see I have quite a few of these new. I got a good deal. I stocked up on them because I knew sometimes with a good thing, when a company makes a good thing, you stock up on them because they're probably not going to be made for that long. And sure enough, with the 502 Plus, apparently what they did for a while is they used some sort of like a laser, I don't know how they did it, some sort of etching. So as opposed to a traditional lathing, they used some sort of an etching, if you can see that. They did it on the 802 Plus, and then they had the 302 Plus. And they might have done it on a few Innovations back in the day, or Dimensions, I forget. Anyway, but this is a good cymbal. It's not quite as, I hate to use the word sophisticated, but it doesn't really have the huge long sustain that Giant Beats have, but I did find that when you're playing with a band, if I were to put a 2002 up, like if we were playing loud with the band, and then this one up, in the context of the music, to me, this sounded a heck of a lot more like a giant beat than the 2002 did. So I love these cymbals. See that? Now this bell is huge. Well, it's bigger. I mean, it's bigger than the original giant beat bell, which is bigger than the 2002 bell, and which is bigger than the giant beat reissue bell, because the giant beat reissue and the 2002 bells are the same, in my opinion. So that's a big bell. This is almost like very much like a what were the lines they used to make? Like the Dixies and the Cymbals. Yeah, the original, I had a 24-inch or 26-inch Cymbal, and those old ones, those were all nickel silver. They had little teeny holes. But the bells were very much like this. Like almost, this is a total, like, look at this. This is like the day the earth stood still. You know, I'm waiting for Klaatu to walk out of the hole and zap me into a crisp. Anyway, so this is a 502 Plus, which for years, before the giant beats were reissued, I used to go on and fawn about. But it's hard to hear here because this is heavier. I want to say this is probably, this might be, I don't have the scale handy right now, but I would say this is probably maybe 1580 grams. Anyway, it's hard, with a heavier cymbal, sometimes you'll hear up front some overtones. Like if you're just sitting there listening to it. Scheisse. You'll hear some overtones to the cymbal that you won't hear out in front, that you won't hear from a few feet away. And that's true with Zildjians and any other cymbal. And again, I find with B8 alloy, especially Paiste, but anybody's B8 alloy, Zildjian's ZBT or Sabian's B8 or B8 Pro or just Pro or whatever the heck they had, which they did have. They had B8, B8 Pro, and Pro. Anyway, I find that B8 alloy, generally, sometimes when you're playing it up close, like right here, in an intimate drum set setting, B8 alloy will slightly, often, most of the time, in my opinion, sound a little harsher than B20 alloy. Slightly, but also too, I mean, just in general, especially to somebody who's been playing B20 their whole life and they sit down and hear it. But the thing is, at a slight distance, in my opinion, and in the context especially of other frequencies, I think B8 actually sounds much cleaner and to me actually, better, superior. And if you play B8 for a long enough time, you get accustomed to them up close too, and they do sound great. And I'll tell you, the reissue giant beats they have I think are almost perfect cymbals, because I love the B8. And they really did a great job. I mean, I think everyone was thinking, that'd be totally rock cymbals. When I first heard these reissues, I was like, wow, there's a lot of they're great all-around cymbals. I mean, they sound great for rock because they're B8 and everything, but they're really clean and really, I think, sophisticated in the sense that, sometimes, B8 can, to a lot of people, sound one or two dimensional. But again, a thinner, I found years ago I had a Paiste standard. Because Paiste standards were mostly NS12 or nickel silver. But toward the end, they started making them out of B8. Of course, they all said Ludwig, they went through Ludwig. Ludwig, sold them for. And also, too, there's a cymbal called a super. Now, I think there might have been some supers that said Paiste on it. I don't know, I've had a few of them in my life, I just can't recall. But a lot of supers were nickel silver too, but some of them, of course, later were B8 alloy. And some of those supers were like wafer thin, and they were lathed a lot like giant beats, very similar. And there was, even though there was a trashy quality to them, a real thin B8 alloy, in my opinion, cymbal is a great jazz cymbal. It's not dry, it's not like Sahara dry, like a heavily hammered super dry B20 cymbal. But there's a dark kind of trashiness to it, which I think sounds terrific. So when the reissues first came out, I went on the Cymbal forums and I was like, they're great. Of course I bitched and moaned about the size of the bell. I went back and read my post and I, sounded like one of those guys that complains about everything, as I guess I was. But I told everybody, I said, you guys got to check out these giant beats. And of course a lot of guys knew they were coming out and they were stumbling over themselves to get them anyway. But I even told jazz guys, I put in the post to jazz guys who might read it, you got to check these cymbals out. So, anyway, two original white label giant beats. Let me make sure that, because they did use it technically a different embossed stamp sometimes, so maybe I could show you. No, these have the same embossed stamp. Anyway, so the heaviest of the two, remember, originals, reissue. Okay, the medium, weight, one of the three. Now listen to that high frequency there. All right. Okay, so here they are. Again, the Paiste giant beats. I think in general, maybe it is the slightly smaller bell, that they use from the 2002s. I don't know. Maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe whatever. I'm not sure. I'm not I don't know the ins and outs of what happens over there in Switzerland and Germany. But the giant beats are a great lining. God bless America that they brought them back. So. I'm going to make next is coming. I'm going to make a video. There's going to be a video of 3 16-inch 2002 black labels, which is kind of, in my opinion, a little anticlimactic to this. But he gave me the Cymbal, so God love him. So I'm going to make those. So again, if you're ever looking for an original giant beat, remember the original giant beats up until '74, they always have at the 3 o'clock an embossed stamp. Okay, this is embossed. See that? It's very similar to the 602 stamp, except it doesn't say 602. And again, I'll remind you that the giant beats were one of two of the Cymbal lines that Paiste made where they did not actually put the words giant beat in this. Just says, what does it say? Well, trademark, Paiste made in Switzerland. Okay? So you'll always see that on originals. And then over here it'll either say giant beat in whitish font, or later, starting in about 71, the logo was very similar to this, where it says Paiste in black, Paiste giant beat. And you will see serial numbers on them. I have some pictures on my computer I can show you. Stand by. Anyway. So there you go. These are them. Thank you for watching the video, and of course thanks for putting up with my attention deficit craziness.